Hi, William Holland students. This is Jan Stevens. I'm here in my studio, Wrapsody Jewelry Studio in Winter Garden, Florida. And Chris has asked me to do a demo of one of the projects from our silverware jewelry class that we do at the William Holland School. And we are so sorry that we were unable to see everybody this year. And I hope everyone is COVID safe and well, and looking forward to next year's season because I understand it's going to be a really, really good one. First of all, let me introduce you to Lucy. Lucy is over here on her poofy. Let's see if we can get the camera on her. Oh, there she is. She is resting beautifully, and she is my main helper at Wrapsody Jewelry Studio. And she is sitting there just waiting to get involved when she needs to. So in the event that she hears something exciting, she may bark in the middle of this video, just so you know what that's all about. Let me show you first of all some of the projects that we do in that beginner class. There are a number of them, and I want to just first of all pan through them all so that you can see exactly what we do. Hang on one second, let me flip the camera around. Okay, so let me show you some of the projects that we make in the beginners class. I'm going to just pan slowly over the projects so that you can see them, and then I'll go back and I'll kind of talk about each one specifically. Okay, the first one that we teach you is the basic spoon ring, made from a spoon or a fork handle. And then this is the bypass ring, also made from a spoon or fork handle. And then we have the demi-tasse spoon ring, made from an entire demi-tasse spoon. We can also teach you how to make the heart pendant, which is made from a spoon or fork handle in a very similar process as this traditional spoon ring, but with an extra bend. Then we'll be teaching you a number of spoon bowl projects. These are spoon bowl pendants. The top one has been drilled with a jump ring. The bottom one has a bail turned in it, made from a traditional teaspoon. The top one here has a little bit of wire work and some beads, and the bottom one has some vintage pieces that have been attached to it for embellishment. The top one here was made very much like the basic spoon bowl pendant, but we cut a mermaid's tail out of it. And the bottom one's been drilled with a fancy wire bell and some beads. Then we have a couple of spoon bowl bracelets. The top one is your basic spoon bowl bracelet, which I'll show you in just a minute. And the bottom one is 3 spoon bowls that have been bent and curved to fit your wrist and then connected together to make a bracelet. Then we teach you how to make earrings out of fork tines. And then these are a couple of cross jewelry pieces. The one on the left is a pendant, and the one on the right is a bracelet with chain. And next we have a tab pendant made from a spoon or fork handle, and a money clip made from a spoon or fork handle, and then a key fob to hang in your purse with your keys on them. This hangs on the edge of your purse and dangles down so that you can always find your keys. Then we have 2 knife handle pendants, a smaller version and a larger version, and each of them have a clapper inside, so they make a little jingle as you move. Then we teach you to make a number of different bracelets. This is that traditional bracelet that I was talking about. It's made from a basic teaspoon. And then this same bracelet is the one that we cut to make this particular articulated version. This is a fork bracelet that's been embellished with some vintage pieces. This is a single handled from a spoon or fork bracelet. This is a double handle bracelet, again from a spoon or fork handle, with some embellishment and little charms on it. And on this one, it's made exactly the same as the traditional, yet we put a clock face on this one, and on this one we used a snap button. This again is your basic spoon bracelet, and then here we've used the basic spoon bracelet, but we cut the mermaid's tail out of it. And this is a butter knife bracelet, and let me take this off so you can see it a little bit better, so that you can see the butter knife. There we go, there's your butter knife. And we bent it into a bracelet shape. This is a really popular one. It's also really comfortable to wear. And this is a bracelet made from a knife handle that's been flattened into a hook and leather added to make kind of a more masculine bracelet. The men really like that one. And then we have the bracelet that's, the collar that's been made with the spoon handles or fork handles, but instead of using one, we've used 5 and turned it into a really elegant collar. All these projects can be found in my book, The SilverWear Jewelry, The Art of Upcycling and Repurposing Vintage Silverware into Beautiful Jewelry. I've written this, and I wrote it about 3 years ago. And inside the book, you'll see all of the projects that I just showed you. Plus, you'll also see 6 or 7 of the more intermediate level projects. It also gives you all the tools and supplies that you need to do all the projects in the book. And then each project, there are the beginner projects, and each project has step-by-step directions to get you carried all the way through making the project. All right, so let me go get Keith, and he's going to show you how to make the traditional spoon ring. Okay, I'll be right back.
Hi, Keith Stevens here with Wrapsody Jewelry. Today we're going to make a ring, a traditional ring from this spoon. First we have to prepare the ring and get a blank that's satisfactory for us. And we're going to refer to Jan's SilverWear Jewelry book, and it's on page 9 for the traditional ring or the overlap ring. We have a size chart there to tell you what length to cut your shank so that we can meet the needs for you or for your customer with regard to the size ring that they need. Today I've selected just under a 3-inch ring. This will let me make anywhere from a size 4 or 5 up to about a 7.5 to 7 3/4. Several factors come into play here. The width of your spoon handle, the thickness of the stock. So you might want to keep in mind, if you're making a very small size, you would obviously cut the shank shorter than I have here. And again, you can reference page 9 for the correct lengths to cut. When in question, always defer to the next longer length, and it gives you more ability for a range of sizes. Before we put this on the forming press, and we'll show you that step in a moment, there are some things that we need to do, of course, to get this ready. First, I'm going to actually cut this spoon handle, and I'm going to use a pair of shears. Fabulous Harbor Freight tool here, but they work wonders for what we're doing. You could cut this on a saw, but this is much safer, readily available, and then we're going to dress the end of this piece where we've cut it off. Ordinarily, by the way, if we were going to be using this, the spoon bowl portion for another project, we would go ahead and flatten this on the press, but we have demoed that on another video, and we'll save that for another lesson and demo on another video. I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and again, I've already marked it where I want to cut it. So I just simply take these shears and I cut it square, and it's going to require that I dress it. And as you see, that particular one came completely apart. So now I have my handle, and then I'll save this piece to make another project at a later time. Now that I've cut this, of course it's rough on the end, but to accommodate where this will overlap and lay against the wearer's finger, we want to flare this and thin this out slightly. The easiest way to do this is with a hammer. Some people may want to take and actually use a grinding wheel. You need to be careful using a grinding wheel in that it removes metal very fast, and if you cut through it too quickly, you can ruin the piece. I prefer the hammer method, and I'll use basically a slightly rounded hammer head. You can use a ball peen hammer. This is a similar version, a more sophisticated perhaps, but it's still a ball peen hammer. So I'm going to now put this on my anvil near the edge. In just a moment, and Jen's going to move the camera closer so you can see the detail. But I don't want my piece way back up on my anvil. I need to get it where I can strike right on the tip that I've cut. And again, we don't want to mess with this end. This is the top side. The other thing you want to be sure of, some of the patterns are so similar front and back, you got to make sure that you're on the front of the piece. So we're on the front, and I'm going to take my hammer and I'm going to make a glancing blow, not straight down, but a glancing blow. So this will take several blows and we'll get it worked out. Watch your fingers and just strike the end like this. And you have to hit it pretty firmly. And you see it slipping back, so I got to reposition it. And there's no hurry about this. And I'm going to stop and look at it. And as you can see from the side profile, I've thinned it out as well as I have flared it out.
See the back side and the front side.
Here's the back or the underside. This is what will actually lie against the wearer's finger. And here's the top side. Now that little bevel and thinning accomplishes two things. One, it's a comfort factor, and two, it thins the stock out where it overlaps so it's not so thick. I'm going to tap it a couple more times. And I'm pretty much done, except that I'm going to now take it, put it on a grinding wheel or a buffer, not a buffer, but a fiber wheel. And I want to smooth this up. The other way to do this, and I like to do it that way, is with a file. You can control it much more. But if you don't have the files and you do have a fiber wheel, you can do that method as well, and we'll show that now. We've moved now to the grinding wheel, and I'm going to take the handle piece that I've set up for my ring, and I'm going to smooth this on the grinding wheel. And you want to do this with a very light touch, no heavy pressure, and be careful and work from the underside.
Make sure you use safety glasses.
And by the way, Jen's reminding me you should be wearing safety glasses whenever you're using a grinding wheel or a buffing wheel or any power tool in your studio. These little particles fly off and they're not very comfortable in your eye and can outright injure you. So we want to be careful. All right, we've got our grinder set. We're going to turn it on. You don't need real high speed, but just enough speed so that when you apply slight pressure, you're not overloading the wheel and slowing it down. Light pressure. If you use too much pressure, one, you take too much metal away, and two, the stock will heat up pretty quickly. And you can see how I'm kind of wiping this from the bottom out. Don't stick it on the top like this, it'll throw it back at you. I'm using very light touch, and I'm feeling for burrs. We've now finished our grinding touch, and we're going to dress it on the fiber wheel to give us our final smoothing process. And again, light touch, brush from the bottom. Same thing, we don't want to stick it in up here. The wheels are turning towards you, and it can throw the stock across the room if it doesn't hit you. We don't want either thing to happen. We don't want to also come way up on the shank here in the event that you need to adjust the size of this ring, which again, to remind you, we've cut the length of this to give us the ability to make a range of sizes. We could take this down to probably a size 5 comfortably without it having too much overlap, and out to probably about a size 7.5 with this length stock. So we don't want to mess up any more than the bevel portion of this with regard to using the fiber wheel. Or if you're using a file or grinding, the grinding wheel especially, we want to be careful not to come way up onto the shank or the piece of stock that you've cut. We're now ready to move over to the press, and we'll use the Wrapsody Jewelry forming press to bend this piece into a ring shape. Bear with us and we'll get you over to the press. We've moved over to the Wrapsody SilverWear Bender, and I've actually already set it up to use it as a ring forming device, but we'll show you some of the parts of it so you'll understand what you're looking at here. These particular forming sleeves are what we use to make a bracelet, and we're not going to do that today. We do have another video available for you to see that, but they mount directly on this primary mandrel, and this mandrel acts as the receiver also for the mandrels that we use to form rings or other special bends that can be made using the forming press. And we use that term forming press and SilverWear Bender interchangeably, but the emphasis is that this is a progressive forming tool. It's not a die stamping tool, and we're going to show you what we mean as we form this piece of silverware handle into a ring. Other parts that are available in conjunction with this are other size mandrels. We start when we're making rings with the largest mandrel always, and we work down depending on the size that we need to make. Now I want to clarify that we're using the SilverWear Bender for the purpose of shape and form, not for size. You actually will size this ring on a conventional, traditional jeweler's ring sizing tool, and we'll show that step when we get our ring formed. All right, what I've done, I put the mandrel receiver in on the opposing side. I turn it to lock it in, and I'm going to insert my largest ring forming mandrel into the receiver side. I'm going to move these out of the way so you can see. And there's another part here that's critical, and this is called the forming block. And it's designed with 2 different radius grooves in it, depending on the size bend that you're attempting to accomplish. We'll start with the largest mandrel, and we're going to start with the largest groove in the forming block. And there are 2 locator pins on the base of the press that you should take care to insert in the guide holes in the forming block. I'm going to start my bend, and you remember that your pattern side, which will be the top of your ring when you finish, or the outside, is going to be on facing down. I'm going to overlap the tip where I flared and beveled my stock or my ring shank just over the shoulder of the forming block. And I'm going to make a slight bend, a very slight bend, and we don't want a full compression. We want just a little hitch so that it looks like this. What we're doing here is we're setting the ring shank up to accept an actual rounded bend, and we'll show you what we mean. We're going to take another, we call this a crimp bend when we're talking about it in class. I'm going to back off. I'm going to put my stock in a little bit further. I want that first bend that I made to be on the shoulder of the forming block. I'm going to make another crimp bend, and it's going to look like that. Now I'm going to go right between the first crimp bend and the second crimp bend. This is going to be centered under my mandrel, and I'm going to make a full compression now. And keep in mind, this is a progressive forming tool, not a die stamping tool. A die stamping tool is where you can put a piece of metal in it and compress it one time and it makes the shape. Well, you're not able to do that without creating basically a 90-degree bend on a piece of silverware stock. So we've set it up so that now it will take a more rounded shape. I'm going to finish this out to the end such that this prepped tip is going to be facing back 180 degrees this way. Don't bend it too far. Just make sure that it comes on back. And I'm going to make compressions here, another compression, and these are full compressions. Now I've developed a candy cane, we call it, just to give you a reference of what shape we're talking about. And while that may not be absolutely perfectly pointed back toward me, it's enough for the purpose that we need at this point. We'll finish it as we come back to that. I'm going to turn the stock around, and I'm making sure again that I put the correct pattern on the outside. This particular piece of stock has pattern on both sides, but I'm making sure that I correctly position this. Again, I'm going to put the outside or the finished side down, and I'm going to make a crimp bend here. You can see there. I'm going to make another crimp bend behind it. And I want to try to keep this stock perpendicular to my mandrel. I don't want to turn it this way or this way. I want it to be straight. Now I've made my two crimp bends, and I'm going to do now a full compression. And that's where you can see I've started making a nice radius, but I'm not finished. I've got to work it all the way to the end. So I made that compression. Now I've got to get it where it'll catch on my forming block, and I may have to go down in there. So now I've got a nice radius. We're ready now that we've got a canoe, we'll call it, a canoe shape. We're ready to start bringing the beveled end underneath what will be the end of our shank and our decorative portion. I'm going to put it back in the press, and I'm going to start closer to, I've got to find a place where it will hold on the forming block. I'm just going to make a light compression. I'm holding it with thumb and forefinger so I can feel the metal move. You can actually feel it move. And I'm making a light compression until I make sure that I'm getting the beveled end that I hammered and ground down and buffed underneath my finished pattern. So I've got it started, I'm bringing it under, and I've got to be really careful because this is a small shank, but I've got to get it underneath, so I've got to hold it, and it's slipping a little bit, so I may need to go to my narrower width. I'm going to just turn this around. What this does when I'm using the narrower, smaller radius groove in the forming block, it lets me grip this stock a little better. And we'll make a point about this. This material is by necessity relatively soft. This is the expendable part of the machine, and from time to time that part has to be replaced. But if we didn't have this material, it would score and mark your stock, and it doesn't want to hold it where you can form. And can you see the bevel end is going underneath now? And I don't know if you saw that, but you can see how far that it's moved under here. And we're, in essence, somewhat finished with this, but I want it to be perfectly round, so I'm going to continue to take this stock and go around in little increments so that I can get the perfectly round shape that I'm looking for. Now then, we're pretty much completed except for sizing. So depending on the wearer's size, I'll actually put this on a ring sizing mandrel, and I will then use a conventional leather mallet to finish this process. We're back to show you our ring. And again, for those of you not familiar, this is a jeweler's ring sizing mandrel. The sizes are marked on it. And currently this ring worked out to be about a 7.5. If that's what you need for your customer or for yourself, then you're finished, other than our final step would be that we would put this in our tumbler with steel shot, a little bit of Dawn liquid, and just cover the shot with water and run it for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how polished you want this. And this will come out amazingly, brilliantly shiny. For those of you that want it to not be that shiny, you can just leave it as it is. Other things can be done to this shank. We'll talk about that in another video, but that can be embellished with some hammer texture. And this particular blank, it gives us that opportunity. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to show you what we would do if we were going to size this down. If I'm going to reduce the size, let's say you only need a size 6, you actually will put it back on the SilverWear Bender and select the next size down mandrel and use that until you get it to the reduced size. And actually what you want to do is get it slightly smaller than what you need, and then we would put it back on the mandrel. Let's say I wanted to adjust this ring up to a size 8 in this case. Then I can put my stock, my ring on my sizing mandrel, and I can use a leather mallet. You could use a rubber mallet. I like the leather mallet. And you go around the shank in little increments, and it will take this as you drive it down this way, not this way, but straight down. You can increase the inside diameter of your ring. If I want to take it to a smaller size, I'm going to put it back in the press, shape it down to where it's probably a 5.5, 5 3/4, and then I would again take my sizing mandrel, my leather mallet, and I'm going to hammer it. One other tip is I would go about halfway to your size, target size, and I would turn the ring stock over and finish it to the actual size you want. And the reason for that is so that we don't develop a taper like the shape of the ring sizing mandrel on the inside of the ring. That would make it fit one way but not fit if you put it on the other way. So we're pretty much done with this ring. It's too small for my pinky finger, but at the same time, now you can see that we've pretty much completed this ring other than tumbling to give us our final jewelry piece. Hope you enjoyed the video. We'd be glad to address any questions to our email address.
janstevens@bellsouth.net, or you can go to www.wrapsodyjewelry.com.